Joining us now, Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence. Mr. Vice President, thank you for being with us, sir. We appreciate your time with our audience.
Hey, great to be on the John Fredericks Show. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And as you know, Mr. Vice President, I had the honor of emceeing several of your rallies in Virginia. We had a lot of fun. Remember that?
Yeah. I couldn't be more grateful to you, John. Thank you for your friendship and your support, and it's great to be on your radio program finally.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. And just a full disclaimer for everybody, I was the Virginia state chairman of the Trump-Pence campaign for president, so that everyone knows that. Mr. Vice President, let's get right to the American Health Care Act. 6 of our GOP House members in my coverage area in Virginia and North Carolina are in opposition to it. Many of our listeners have said they're really concerned that it's not going far enough with competition, opening up markets, lowering premiums. Mr. Vice President, why do you think this is going to work for all Americans, sir?
Well, you actually asked exactly the right question, and that is that we need to begin with recognizing where we are. 7 years ago this month, Barack Obama sat down and signed Obamacare into law. And every single promise of Obamacare has failed. He promised us if you like your doctor, you can keep them. Said if you like your insurance, you can keep it. Said that the cost of insurance premiums would go down. Literally millions of Americans have lost their health insurance, lost the ability to choose their doctor, and we've seen health insurance premiums skyrocket. And left intact, Obamacare will continue to spiral out of control. It is literally a collapsing building. I was in Kentucky about a week ago, and Humana Health Insurance, which is based in Kentucky, it's a hometown team. Thousands of employees said that they couldn't even stay in the Kentucky Healthcare Exchange anymore. You see health insurance companies fleeing. Millions of Americans essentially have no choice in health insurance. And so when President Trump said on the campaign trail that we were going to repeal and replace Obamacare, and every Republican in Congress promised we would do that, the president made it clear the morning after the election. He looked at me and he said, I need you to tell Congress that's the first promise we're going to keep. We're going to drive forward. We're going to start that process as soon as we can. And the bill that comes to the Congress tomorrow really is the beginning of the end of Obamacare. But it is just the beginning, which I think is your point, John. And your listeners would do well to recognize that this first bill, which is a budget bill, so it only takes 51 votes in the Senate, allows us to repeal the taxes and tax penalties of Obamacare, transfer much of Medicaid back to the states, even in the form of block grants to allow people of Virginia to innovate in health care for the most vulnerable. And that, combined with what Secretary Price is doing at the president's direction to help create a national marketplace, and one more bill this spring, which will wash away any remaining vestiges of Obamacare and open up that national marketplace once and for all, is a three-step process that where we can literally reverse the failed policies of the last 7 years and launch America onto a healthcare future built on personal responsibility, freedom, consumer choice, and state-based flexibility and reform.
Mr. Vice President, some of the House of Representative members that are in opposition to this right now have expressed a concern. They said to me, look, we're never going to get to phase 3. It's just an empty promise. Leadership has said things to us. It hasn't ever come to be. How can you guarantee right now that you're actually going to get to the third phase where we open up the competition and create the type of environment that can eventually bring premiums down, sir?
I have a two-word answer to that. President Trump. John, you know the president. He is a man of his word. He is somebody that believes in getting 100% of the goal done. And the president, when you sit down with him, and I know you have, You sit down with him. His vision for healthcare reform in the future can be summed up in, let's remove state lines so that the American people can buy health insurance the way you buy life insurance, the way you buy car insurance, across state lines.
Right.
And then allow states to have the freedom and flexibility to redesign Medicaid in ways that will better serve our most vulnerable. And I'm absolutely confident that come this spring, the president is not going to rest. He's not going to relent until we travel the country and work with members of Congress to finish this process, to finish that last step. And as you know, the president is a very determined man, and he doesn't give up.
Yes.
And I think anybody that knows him knows that he's going to keep this promise to the American people, just as he has all of his promises. And we're going to fight all the way through this. And let me give credit to conservatives that many of which are in your listening audience who've expressed some reservations, and particularly the members of Congress. I'm just so grateful that they've improved the bill because of House conservatives and the president's support. We've added a work requirement that states can now have a work requirement for able-bodied adults in Medicaid. We've added a block grant to the states. There's going to be additional changes, I expect, in the next 24 hours to improve this bill with common-sense conservative principles. So this is the legislative process. I'll leave after we finish talking and head off to a whole day of meetings with members of Congress. But I give great credit to these principled conservatives that are driving for everything that we can do in this first bill. But I can tell you, and you know him, John.
Yes, I do.
Not every talk show host that I talk to in the country knows the president. I
know him well.
And he is not going to rest. He's not going to relent until Obamacare is a thing of the past, and we've launched a whole new era of healthcare reform based on free market principles and state-based reform.
Well, I can attest to that, Mr. Vice President. I know him well. I've been fighting these battles with him against these trade deals forever. He's never lied to me, and he's a man of his word. So on that, I can agree. We're almost out of time. Final question. I've got people asking me, how does this bring down premiums for average people who got annihilated with Obamacare and had to drop out of the whole system?
It's the right question, and it's the question that I think we need to continue to drive the right answer on. The Congressional Budget Office, of course, said that after just a couple of years, you'll see premiums going down if all you did was this first bill. But that's not good enough. What the president really believes is that by beginning the process in this bill, we're pulling the teeth out of Obamacare. We're going to repeal the taxes and the tax penalties so that the American people no longer are forced to buy health insurance or pay a tax penalty. We're going to begin the process of Medicaid innovation and reform that will have some broad-based impacts. But Secretary Price right now is working on reforms at Health and Human Services, and we're considering additional amendments that will start the process of allowing Americans to buy health insurance across state lines. You know, the president really believes in competition. He believes that allowing Americans to buy health insurance the way you buy car insurance, the way you buy life insurance, will literally, he said in the Oval Office yesterday, you'll go from essentially where millions of Americans today have essentially no choice for health insurance. You'll have people have 20 and 30 and 40 choices in front of them that are stylized to their particular lives, their particular needs. And the insurance companies will be out there competing for the business of the American people. Toss into that a little bit of the tax credits that we're going to be providing to help Americans afford health insurance and credit their taxes for what they spend on it. And you've got an environment where we just really believe, using the power of personal choice and free markets, that you'll see the premiums coming down, just as CBO predicted, even just with this first bill. But with all these reforms, we're going to see the cost of health insurance go down. And frankly, I think you're going to see more and more Americans have health insurance coverage.
All right, Mr. Vice President, we're out of time. Thank you for being with us. We just had Congressman Chris Collins on. He said you're 6 shy of making it over the top. Do you think you'll make it there?
I believe we will. I have to tell you, President Trump went to Capitol Hill yesterday. We had meetings throughout the day with members, and I give a lot of credit to the principled conservatives out there and all of the members who've been working with the administration to do as much as we can as soon as we can. But tomorrow's vote represents not the end of the process, John, to your point. This is the beginning of the end of Obamacare. We're going to continue to work with Secretary Price to advance reforms, and come this spring, with the President's signature on that second bill, Obamacare will be a thing of the past, and we'll launch an entirely new era of healthcare reform based on more choices for consumers, lower costs through competition, and state-based innovation and reform that will truly create better healthcare coverage for the most vulnerable among us.
We're out of time. I want to thank Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence, for being with us. Mr. Vice President, we appreciate the time. We'll see what turns out tomorrow, and we appreciate your being with us today, sir. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Great to be on the show, John. Talk to you soon.